Chapter 5, When People Revolt, 1857 and After. So, children, in this chapter, we will be covering about the major causes, some events, and after effects of this revolt of 1857. Okay, so now including the erosion of Nawab's power, because in this chapter, we will see that Nawab's power has come to end, and also an important event where Indian Sipahis, called Sepoys, they raised their voices against the cartridges which were given them to use made of cow and pig fat. Okay, so they revolted against this. This uprising started from Meerut, which is in North India in Uttar Pradesh. Okay, in and then Mangal Pandey, he was the first person who started this, and this spread over major cities of Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, and so on, right? And also these Sipahis they wanted to make the last Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar as their leader. So now let's see how this happened and what and how this ended. Okay. So before proceeding, let's see this figure 1 first. Sepoys and peasants gather forces for the revolt that spread across the plains of North India in 1857. Okay. Policies and the people. In the previous chapters, you looked at the policies of the East India Company and the effect they had on different people. Kings, queens, peasants, landlords, tribals, soldiers were all affected in different ways. You have also seen how people resist policies and actions that harm their interest or go against their sentiments. Now, Nawabs lose their power. Since the mid 18th century, Nawabs and Rajas had seen their power erode. They had gradually lost their authority and honor. Residents had been stationed in many courts. The freedom of the rulers reduced, the armed forces disbanded, and the revenues and territories taken away by stages. Many ruling families tried to negotiate with the company to protect their interests. For example, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi wanted the company to recognize her adopted son as the heir of the kingdom after the death of her husband. Then, Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao too, pleaded that he be given his father's pension when the latter died. However, the company, confident of its superiority and military powers, turned down these pleas because the company now wanted to only rule. They wanted to make their own laws, right? The, the company was not ready to listen to any one of them. So they rejected all the pleas. Awadh was one of the last territories to be annexed. In 1801, a subsidiary alliance was imposed on Awadh, and in 1856 it was taken over. Governor General Dalhousie declared that the territory was being misgoverned and British rule was needed to ensure proper administration. The company even began to plan how to bring the Mughal dynasty to an end. The name of the Mughal king was removed from the coins minted by the company. In 1849, Governor General Dalhousie announced that after the death of Bahadur Shah Zafar, the family of the king would be shifted out of the Red Fort and given another place in Delhi to reside in. In 1856, Governor General Canning decided that Bahadur Shah Zafar would be the last Mughal king, and after his death, none of his descendants would be recognized as kings. They would just be called princes. Okay, so up till this extent, they have decided. Now the peasants and the sepoys. In the countryside, peasants and zamindars resented the high taxes and the rigid methods of revenue collection. Many failed to pay back their loans to the moneylenders and gradually lost the lands they had tilled for generations. Because in the last chapter we see how much they have to pay and how they were exploited, right? The Indian sepoys and the employer of the company also had reasons for discontent. They were unhappy about their pay, allowances, and conditions of service. Some of the new rules, moreover, violated their religious sensibilities and beliefs. Did you know that in those days many people in the country believed that if they crossed the sea they would lose their religion and caste? So when in 1824 the sepoys were told to go to Burma by the sea route to fight for the company, they refused to follow the order, though they agreed to go by the land route. So because they refused, so they were severely punished. And since the issue did not die down, in 1856 the company passed a new law which stated that every new person who took up employment in the company's army had to agree to serve overseas if required. So they can't make any excuses now. Okay. Sepoys also reacted to what was happening in the countryside. Many of them were peasants and had families living in the villages. So the anger of the peasants quickly spread among the sepoys. Responses to reforms. The British believed that Indian society had to be reformed. Laws were passed to stop the practice of sati and to encourage the remarriage of widows. English language education was actively promoted. Then after 1830, the company allowed Christian missionaries to function freely in its domain and even own land and property. In 1850, a new law was passed to make conversion to Christianity easier. This law allowed an Indian who had converted to Christianity to inherit the property of his ancestors. Many Indians began to feel that the British were destroying the religion, the social customs, and the traditional way of life because they were asking Indians to be converted to Christianity. There were, of course, other Indians who wanted to change existing social practices. Okay. Now, see the figure 2. Sepoys exchanged news and rumors in the bazaars of North India. Now, through the eyes of the people. To get a glimpse of what people were thinking those days about British rule, study sources 1 and 2. Let's study source 1 first. The list of 84 rules. Given here are excerpts from the book Majha Pravas written by Vishnu Bhatt Godse, a Brahmin from a village in Maharashtra. He and his uncle had set out to attend a yajna being organized in Mathura. Mathura is again in Uttar Pradesh and UP. Vishnu Bhatt writes that they met some sepoys on the way who told them that they should not proceed on the journey because a massive upheaval was going to break out in 3 days. The sepoy said the English were determined to wipe out the religion of the Hindus and Muslims. They had made a list of 84 rules and announced these in a gathering of all big kings and princes in Calcutta. They said that the kings refused to accept these rules and warned the English of dire consequences and massive upheaval if these were implemented. That the kings all returned to their capitals in great anger. All the big people began making plans. A date was fixed for the war of religion and the secret plan had been circulated from the cantonment in Meerut by letters sent to different cantonments. Now this was source 1, now source 2. There was soon excitement in every regiment. Another account we have from those days are the memoirs of Subedar Sitaram Pandey. Sitaram Pandey was recruited in 1812 as a sepoy in the Bengal Native Army. He served the Englishmen for 48 years and retired in 1860. He helped the British to suppress the uprising through his own son, though his own son was a rebel and was killed by the British in front of his eyes. On retirement, he was persuaded by his commanding officer, Norgate, to write his memoirs. He completed the writing in 1861 in Avdi, and Norgate translated it into English and had it published under the title From Sepoy to Subedar. Now here's an excerpt from what Sitaram Pandey wrote. It is my humble opinion that the seizing of Awadh filled the minds of sepoys with distrust and led them to plot against the government. Agents of the Nawab of Awadh and also the King of Delhi were sent all over India to discover the temper of the army. They worked upon the feelings of sepoys, telling them how treacherously the foreigners had behaved towards their king. They invented 10,000 lies and promises to persuade the soldiers to mutiny and turn against their masters, the English with the object of restoring the Emperor of Delhi to the throne. They maintained that this was wholly within the army's powers if the soldiers would only act together and do as they were advised. Okay, now this figure 3, rebel sepoys at Meerut attack officers, enter their homes and set fire to buildings. It chanced that about this time the Sarkar sent parties of men from each regiment to different garrisons for instructions on use of new rifle. These men performed the new drill for some time until a report got about by some means or the other that the cartridges used for these new rifles were greased with fat of cows and pigs. The men from a regiment wrote to others in the regiment telling them about this, and there was soon excitement in every regiment. Some men pointed out that in 40 years' service nothing had ever been done to the Sarkar to insult their religion, but as I have already mentioned that sepoys' minds have been inflamed by the seizure of Awadh. Interested parties were quick to point out that the great aim of the English was to turn us all into Christians, and they had therefore introduced a cartridge in order to bring this about, since both Mohammedans and Hindus would be defiled by using it. So they know that both Muslims and Hindus will be hurt by this. So they intentionally created this thing, right? Then the Colonel Sahib was of the opinion that the excitement, which even he could not fail to see, would pass off as it had done before, and he recommended me to go to my house. So Sitaram Pandey from Sepoy to Subedar. Now the next topic, a mutiny become a popular uprising. Though struggles between rulers and the ruled are not unusual, sometimes such struggles become quite widespread as a popular resistance so that the power of the state breaks down. A very large number of people begin to believe that they had a common enemy and rise up against the enemy at the same time. For such a situation to develop, people have to organize. communicate, take initiative, and display the confidence to turn the situation around. Now, to turn the situation around, there should be groups, and all the people in the group should have the same point of view, right? That is, then only the reform will be successful, right? Now, such a situation developed in the northern parts of India in 1857. After 100 years of conquest and administration, the English East India Company faced a massive uprising that started in May 1857 and threatened the company's very presence in India. Sepoys mutinied in several places beginning from Meerut, and a large number of people from different sections of society rose up in rebellion. Some regarded as the biggest armed resistance to colonialism in the 19th century anywhere in the world. Now, what is mutiny? When soldiers as a group disobey the officers in the army. This is figure 4, the battle in the cavalry lines. On the evening of 3rd July 1857, over 3,000 rebels came from Bareilly, crossed the river Jamuna, entered Delhi, and attacked the British cavalry post. The battle continued all through the night. From Meerut to Delhi. Now, 8th April 1857, a young soldier, Mangal Pandey, was hanged to death for attacking his officers in Barakpur. Now, I already told you about this Mangal Pandey. He was the first person who started this. So, some days later, some sepoys of the regiment at Meerut refused to do the army drill using the new cartridges, which were suspected of being coated with the fat of cows and pigs. 85 sepoys were dismissed from service and sentenced to 10 years in jail for disobeying their officers. This happened on 9th May 1857. The response of other Indian soldiers in Meerut was quite extraordinary. On 10th May, the soldiers marched to the jail in Meerut and released the imprisoned sepoys. They attacked and killed British officers. They captured guns and ammunition and set fire to the buildings and properties of the British and declared war on the Firangis. Now, who are Firangis? Foreigners. The term reflects an attitude of contempt. Now, these sepoys, they were very angry. So they went to the Indian jail, they released their fellow sepoys, right? And they rose up in rebellion. They attacked the British officers, they set their buildings to fire, and their property was destroyed. The soldiers determined to bring an end for their rule in the country, but who would rule the land instead? The soldiers had an answer to this question as well. So they want the last Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar to be their leader. They want him to rule, not the East India Company. The sepoys of Meerut rode all night of 10th May to reach Delhi in the early hours next morning, because Bahadur Shah Zafar used to stay in Delhi, right? As news of their arrival spread, the regiment stationed in Delhi also rose up in rebellion. Again, the British officers were killed in Delhi, arms and ammunition seized, buildings set on fire. Triumphant soldiers gathered around the walls of the Red Fort where the Badshah lived, demanding to meet him. The emperor was not quite willing to challenge the mighty British power, but the soldiers persisted. Now, Bahadur Shah Zafar was not at all interested in fighting with the East India Company, right? He was not ready. But these people, the sepoys, they wanted him to do this. Okay, so they forced their way into the palace and proclaimed Bahadur Shah Zafar as their leader. The aging emperor had to accept this demand. He wrote letters to all the chiefs and rulers of the country to come forward and organize a confederacy of Indian states to fight the British. This single step taken by Bahadur Shah has great implications. Now, as he was aging, so he was not ready to do all this. He was not ready to make British East India Company as his enemy, right? The Mughal dynasty had ruled over a large part of the country. Most smaller rulers and chieftains controlled different territories on behalf of the Mughal ruler. Threatened by the expansion of British rule, many of them felt that if Mughal emperor could rule again, they too would be able to rule their own territories once more under Mughal authority. The British had not expected this to happen. They thought the disturbance caused by the issue of the cartridges would die down. They thought that the situation will settle down in some days and then again we'll rule. But this doesn't happen. But Bahadur Shah Zafar's decision to bless the uprising changed the entire situation dramatically. Often when people see an alternate possibility, they feel inspired and enthused. It gives them the courage, hope and confidence to act. Now the uprising spreads. Now they spread from Meerut to Delhi to Lucknow to Kanpur and other parts. After the British were routed from Delhi, there was no uprising for almost a week. It took that much time for news to travel. Then a spurt of mutinies began. Regiment after regiment mutinied and took off to join other troops at nodal points like Delhi, Kanpur, and Lucknow. After them, the people of the towns and villages also rose up in rebellion and rallied around local leaders, zamindars, and chiefs who were prepared to establish their authority and fight the British. Nana Sahib, the adopted son of late Peshwa Baji Rao, who lived near Kanpur, gathered armed forces and expelled the British garrison from the city. He proclaimed himself Peshwa. He declared that he was the governor under Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. In Lucknow, Burgess Qadar, the son of the deposed Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, was proclaimed the new Nawab. He too acknowledged the suzerainty of Bahadur Shah Zafar. His mother Begum Hazrat Meher took an active part in organizing the uprising against the British. In Jhansi, Rani Lakshmibai joined the rebel sepoys and fought the British along with Tantia Tope, the general of Nana Sahib. Okay, so Tantia Tope was the general of Nana Sahib. In the Mandla region of Madhya Pradesh, Rani Avanti Bai Lodhi of Ramgarh raised and led an army of 4,000 against the British who had taken over the administration of her state. The British were greatly outnumbered by the rebel forces. They were defeated in a number of battles. This convinced the people that the rule of the British had collapsed for a good and gave them the confidence to take the plunge and join the uprising. A situation of widespread popular uprising developed in the entire region of Awadh in particular. On 6 August 1857, we find a telegram sent by Lieutenant Colonel Tytler to his commander-in-chief expressing the fear felt by the British. Our men were cowed by the numbers opposed to them and the endless fighting. Every village is held against us. The zamindars had risen to oppose us. Many new leaders came up. For example, Ahmadullah Shah, a Maulvi from Faizabad, prophesied that the rule of the British would come to an end soon. He caught the imagination of the people and raised a huge force of supporters. He came to Lucknow to fight the British. In Delhi, a large number of Ghazis, or religious warriors, came together to Bareilly, took charge of a large number of fighters who came to Delhi. He became a key military leader of the uprising. In Bihar, an old zamindar, Kubar Singh, joined the rebel sepoys and battled with the British for many months. Leaders and fighters from across the land joined the fight. Okay. So this figure 9, this is a portrait of Nana Sahib. Then this person, this is a portrait of Veer Kubar Singh. Okay, so Veer Kubar Singh was an old zamindar in Bihar. Now the next topic, the company fights back. Now, till when the company will keep quiet? The company had to fight back, right? So unnerved by the scale of the upheaval, the company decided to repress the revolt with all its might. So the company wants to fight with all its might, with all its power. It brought in reinforcements from England, passed new laws so that the rebels could be convicted with ease, and then moved into the storm centers of the revolt. Delhi was recaptured from the rebel forces in September 1857. The last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was tried in court and sentenced to life imprisonment. He and his wife, Begum Zeenat Mahal, were sent to prison in Rangoon in October 1858. Bahadur Shah Zafar died in the Rangoon jail in November 1862. The recapture of Delhi, however, did not mean that the uprising died down after that. People continued to resist and battle the British. The British had to fight for 2 years to suppress the massive forces of popular uprising. Lucknow was taken in March 1858. Rani Lakshmibai was defeated and killed in June 1858. A similar fate awaited Rani Avanti Bai, who, after initial victory in Kheri, chose to embrace death when surrounded by the British on all sides. Tantia Tope escaped to the jungles of central India and continued to fight a guerrilla war with the support of many tribal and peasant leaders. He was captured, tried and killed in April 1859. Children, learn all these years, okay? Now let's see this figure 12. The siege train reaches Delhi. The British forces initially found it difficult to break through the heavy fortification in Delhi. On 3rd September 1857, reinforcements arrived, a 7-mile-long siege train comprising cartloads of cannons and ammunition pulled by elephants. So figure 13, this is postal stamp issued in commemoration of Tantia Tope. Okay. Now, when the British they came into power, they came into action, they pulled all these people down, right? They pulled all these people down. All these people were killed, right? So just as victories against the British had earlier encouraged uprising, the defeat of rebel forces encouraged desertions. The British also tried their best to win back the loyalty of the people. They announced rewards for loyal landholders would be allowed to continue to enjoy traditional rights over their lands. Those who had rebelled were told that if they submitted to the British and if they had not killed any white people, they would remain safe and their rights and claims to land would not be denied. Nevertheless, hundreds of sepoys, rebels, nawabs, and rajas were tried and hanged. Now, this was the aftermath, the after effects of the revolt. Let's see this figure 14 first. This British troops blew up Kashmiri Gate to enter Delhi. Now let's see the aftermaths of the revolt. The British had regained control of the country by the end of 1859, but they could not carry on ruling the land with the same policies anymore. Given below are the important changes that were introduced by the British. So the first one, the British Parliament passed a new act in 1858 and transferred the powers of the East India Company to the British Crown in order to ensure a more responsible management of Indian affairs. A member of the British cabinet was appointed as Secretary of State for India and made responsible for all matters related to the governance of India. He was given a council to advise him called the India Council. Then the Governor General of India was given the title of Viceroy. Now they were also given titles, the Indians were given titles so as to feel them valued, okay, so as to make them valued. Now what is the title of Viceroy? That is a personal representative of the Crown, okay. Through these measures, the British government accepted direct responsibility for ruling India. Now, before proceeding to the second point, let's see this figure 15. British forces capture the rebels near Kanpur. Okay. Now, the next page, point 2. All ruling chiefs of the country were assured that their territory would never be annexed in future. They were allowed to pass on their kingdoms to their heirs, including adopted sons. However, they were made to acknowledge the British Queen as a sovereign paramount. Thus, the Indian rulers were to hold their kingdoms as subordinates of the British Crown. Then the third point, it was decided that the proportion of Indian soldiers in the army would be reduced and number of European soldiers would be increased. Okay, so now number of Indian soldiers would be reduced and then European soldiers number would be increased. It was also decided that instead of recruiting soldiers from Awadh, Bihar, Central India and South India, more soldiers would be recruited from among the Gurkhas, Sikhs and Pathans. The fourth one, the land and property of Muslims was confiscated on a large scale and they were treated with suspicion and hostility. The British believed that they were responsible for the uprising in a big way. Then the fifth one, the British decided to respect the customary religious and social practices of the people in India. Sixth one, policies were made to protect landlords and zamindars and give them security of rights over their lands. Thus, a new phase of history began after 1857. Okay. Now, see here you can see this map. So, the triangle, the red triangle, these are the main centers of the revolt. Remember, starting from Meerut, Delhi, Bareilly, Lucknow, Kanpur, Faizabad, and Jhansi. And black triangles, these are the other centers of the revolt, not the main ones. Okay. Now the next page, the Khurda uprising, a case study. Much before the event of 1857, there had taken place another event of a similar nature at a place called Khurda in 1817. Here it would be instructive for us to study that event and reflect on how resentment against the colonial policies of the British had been building up since the beginning of the 19th century in different parts of the country. Khurda, a small kingdom built up in the late 16th century in the southeastern part of Orissa, was a populous and well-cultivated territory consisting of 105 ghars, 60 large and 1109 small villages at the beginning of the 19th century. Its king Raja Bira Kishore Dev had to give up the possession of 4 parganas, the superintendence of the Jagannath temple and the administration of 14 Gajats. Gajats means princely states to the Marathas under compulsion. His son and successor Mukunda Dev too was greatly disturbed with the loss of fortune. Therefore, sensing an opportunity in the Anglo-Maratha conflict, he had entered into negotiations with the British to get back his lost territories and the rights over the Jagannath temple. But after the occupation of Orissa in 1803, the British showed no inclination to oblige him on either score. Consequently, in alliance with other feudatory chiefs of Orissa and secret support of the Marathas, he tried to assert his rights by force. This led to his deposition and annexation of his territories by the British. As a matter of consolation, he was only given the rights of management of the Jagannath temple with a grant amounting to a mere one-tenth of the revenue of his former estate, and his residence was fixed at Puri. This unfair settlement commenced an era of oppressive foreign rule in Orissa, which paved the way for a serious armed uprising in 1817. Soon after taking over Khurda, the British followed a policy of resuming service tenures. It bitterly affected the lives of ex-militia of the state, the Pikes. The severity of the measure was compounded on account of an unreasonable increase in the demand of revenue and also the oppressive ways of its collection. Consequently, there was a large-scale desertion of people from Khurda between 1805 and 1817. Yet the British went for a series of short-term settlements, each time increasing the demands, not recognizing either the productive capacity of the land or the paying capacity of the Rayyat. No leniency was shown even in case of natural calamities, which Orissa was frequently prone to. Rather, lands of defaulters were sold off to scheming revenue officials or speculators from Bengal. The hereditary military commander of the deposed king, Jagabandhu Vidyadhar, Mahapatra Brahmrabhar Rai, or Buxi Jagabandhu as he was popularly known, was one among the dispossessed landholders. He had in effect become a beggar and for nearly 2 years survived on voluntary contributions from the people of Khurda before deciding to fight for the grievances as well as his own. Over the years, what had added to these grievances were A. The introduction of Sikka rupee, silver currency in the region, then B. The insistence on payment of revenue in the new currency. C. An unprecedented rise in the prices of foodstuff and salt, which had become far-fetched following the introduction of salt monopoly, because of which the traditional salt makers of Orissa were deprived of making salt. And D. The auction of local estates in Calcutta, which brought in absentee landlords from Bengal to Orissa. Besides, the insensitive and corrupt police system also made the situation worse for the armed uprising to take a sinister shape. The uprising was set off on 29th March 1817 as the Pikes attacked the police station and other government establishments at Banpur, killing more than 100 men and took away a large amount of government money. Soon its ripples spread in different directions, with Khurda becoming its epicenter. The zamindars and rayyats alike joined the Pikes with enthusiasm. Those who did not were taken to task. A no-rent campaign was also started. The British tried to dislodge the Pikes from their entrenched position but failed. On 14th April 1817, Buxi Jagabandhu, leading 5 to 10,000 Pikes and men of the Kandh tribe, seized Puri and declared the hesitant king Mukunda Dev II as the ruler. The priests of the Jagannath temple also extended the Pikes their full support. Seeing the situation going out of hand, the British clamped martial law. The king was quickly captured and sent to prison in Cuttack with his son. The Buxi, with his close associate Krishna Chandra Brahmrabhar Rai, tried to cut off all communications between Cuttack and Khurda as the uprising spread to the southern and northwestern parts of Orissa. Consequently, the British sent Major General Martindale to clear off the area from the clutches of the Pikes, while at the same time announcing rewards for the arrest of Buxi Jagabandhu and his associates. In the ensuing operation, hundreds of Pikes were killed, many fled to deep jungles, and some returned home under a scheme of an amnesty. Thus, by May 1817, the uprising was mostly contained. However, outside Khurda, it was sustained by Buxi Jagabandhu with the help of supporters like the Raja of Kujung and the unflinching loyalty of the Pikes until his surrender in May 1825. On their part, the British henceforth adopted a policy of leniency, indulgence, and forbearance towards the people of Khurda. The price of salt was reduced and necessary reforms were made in the police and the justice systems. Revenue officials found to be corrupt were dismissed from service and former landholders were restored to their lands. The son of the king of Khurda, Ramchandra Dev III, was allowed to move to Puri and take charge of the affairs of the Jagannath temple with a grant of rupees 24,000. In sum, it was the first such popular anti-British armed uprising in Orissa, which had far-reaching effect on the future of British administration in that part of the country. To merely call it a Pike rebellion will thus be an understatement. So now we came to the end of this chapter, and I will upload this back exercise in another video. Thank you.